SharePoint 2013 is just chock full of collaboration and social features, and most of them come in the form of lists, which are now known as apps. And most of these have some sort of Office integration to go along with them. So there's a contacts list that integrates with Outlook and overlays contacts inside of Outlook. There is an events list, which displays as a calendar and will integrate with Outlook, overlaying your calendar. There's an announcements list that you can use to broadcast announcements to your team members. A links list, which just keeps track of links that may be of common interest. And then there is a news feeds or activity feed feature that you can use to track the activities of people and also use in a manner similar to Twitter and or Yammer. And then there is a discussions list. Now, historically speaking, the SharePoint discussions list has not been very good, which is probably one of the reasons why Microsoft purchased Yammer and is incorporating that functionality into the product. But it's now been enhanced by a community site. So instead of this being a list, this is actually an entire site that gives you the ability as the administrator to set up groups of topics and allow people to discuss them. There's also a community portal which aggregates the contents of community sites that runs and requires search to back it up. All right, so let's take a look at some demonstrations now. We're going to take a look at the things that integrate with Microsoft Outlook to start with. So let's take a look at contacts and events. All right, so here we are on a team site, and I'm going to add a contacts app, contacts list to this first. So I'm going to come over here to Site Contents and click Add an App. Now, there are a lot of apps available to us out of the box, and it's also possible for us to go out to either a local or centralized SharePoint store to get additional apps. And because there are a lot of them and multiple pages, you may not know where they are, I like to use the search box. And so this is the Contacts app, and I'm just going to select this, and we'll call this Contacts. Now, there are advanced options that we can use, but in the case of this one, it's just the name and description. So we'll go ahead and create this. And here we have a list of contacts, right? So I can come here and choose New Item. And you can see that this tracks all sorts of contacty stuff, just like Microsoft Outlook does. So I'll make a new contact, which is my name, Doug Ware. And I'll put my real email address in there. Don't abuse it. And then I'll click Save. And, you know, it's a list of contacts. So this would really be useful to me if it was in Microsoft Outlook, because that's where I manage my contacts from in real life. So up here on the ribbon, there is an option to connect this to Outlook. And so it asks me, do we really want to allow that to happen? And then, do I really want to let that happen? And just like magic, I have a contact list inside of Outlook. And this is a two-way sync. So if I came in here and I added in a fake phone number and saved this and went back over to SharePoint and view this item, you can see that the edit that I made in Outlook went to SharePoint, and vice versa. If I were to edit this one and put in a company and save it, I should see over here in Outlook that the company is going to appear. Now, you just saw that appear underneath my mouse, and the reason for that is that this is using the sync framework. And so it's not necessarily going to be instant coming back the other direction. All right, so if I take a look at the contact here, one of the things I don't like about Outlook is this behavior. or you need to go to business card seems to get the full-blown version of it. All right, so here that we're looking at the full-blown version of the contact, I can see that it is in the shared folder SP 2013 contacts. And one of the nice new features they added is this ribbon button called Copy to My Contacts. And so when I do that, actually I just clicked it twice, which is why it's asking me to update the information. When I come over to my actual contacts list, that contact is there. And so this one is not tied to SharePoint any longer. But if you've got some shared contact list and that you're sharing with your team, but you have individual contacts that you want to pull out, then that feature is very welcome. So next we have the calendar. And I'm going to come back over here to Site Contents and choose Add an App. And here is the calendar app. I'm going to give it a name and create it. And this one, just like the one we were just looking at, will allow us to connect to Outlook. Let me refresh this. Every once in a while I've noticed the ribbon buttons don't respond right off the bat, so if you have that problem, just refresh the page. And here's my SharePoint calendar, and here's my local calendar, and I have this nice overlay view that I can use to see one calendar laid over top of the other. And once again, of course, this is a two-way sync. So there's lots of cool lists that we can use if we want to collaborate, but social networking is also very important. And so you see here, I've already filled in this newsfeed element right here. So I started a conversation using a different account. Right now I'm logged in as administrator. This was when I was logged in as myself, Doug Ware. And so this works just like all of the social tools that you're familiar with. So I can follow the Douglas Ware account to see what he's got going on. I can reply. I can like his post. Right? You've used Yammer, you've used Facebook, you've used Twitter. This should all make perfect sense to you. And then if we look at my site, I can see the activity that I got, which is that I'm now following Douglas Ware. And it says feel free to mention me in a post. And this is one of the things that I want to point out. Just like Microsoft Outlook, this is using a sync framework, and it's also using SharePoint search. And so some of this stuff is not going to appear instantly, but it does show up eventually. So if you're playing with this at home and it doesn't appear to happen, just wait a minute or two, and it will. All right, last thing that I want to look at that's very important for social is this concept called community sites. As I said, discussion lists have always been kind of lame in SharePoint. A lot of people have had to buy third-party products in order to get something that they can be satisfied with. So what I've gone and done now is I've gone to the site settings page, and I'm choosing, or rather the site content page, and I'm choosing new site. And we'll call this site community. And this is going to be a community site. And when this opens up, you can see that we have categories that we can specify, members that we can add, discussion lists. And this also has the ability to create badges. And the badges just have names. And to control reputation settings that give out points with achievement levels. And this has the ability to like and unlike and add and reply and mark things as questions. I'm not going to spend any time digging into this right now because we're just kind of looking at things at the top level. But if you're familiar with SharePoint and you have dismissed SharePoint as a discussion forum, then you need to take a look at the community site. There is also a community portal site. Right now I'm opening up SharePoint Central Administration. And here, instead of creating a site, I'm going to go to Create Site Collections. I'm actually going to create a site, but I want to show you that under the Enterprise tab, there is a selection called Community Portal. And what Community Portal does is it uses the search service to find all of the communities that are created across the farm, and then give you the ability to see what's going on, follow the ones that you like, and ignore the ones that you don't like. SharePoint has been a popular product for web content management for some time. What I mean when I say web content management is basically the ability to create public-facing sites and or corporate intranets. One of the things that has prevented SharePoint from being really dominant in this space, particularly for public-facing sites, is that it was expensive. I mean, really expensive. And so, as a result, in 2013, there is much friendlier licensing. There is no longer a connector license, and external users are now free. And so this reduces the price of SharePoint as a web content management platform for public-facing sites by approximately, 80%. What this is all about is web-based authoring and publishing. Web content management in SharePoint 2010 was basically the same as web content management in MOS 2007. That is no longer the case. There were major investments in web content management features in SharePoint 2013. Now, the editorial and scheduling features are more or less the same. There are processes for approval, workflows for review and approval, features that will allow you to schedule content to appear and disappear at different dates and time. But there have been, like I said, a lot of big investments. And the first one of these is this new tool called Design Manager. One of the problems with creating publishing sites in previous versions of SharePoint was that you needed to understand SharePoint in order to brand it. And so Design Manager is this tool that allows you to take a comp from a design firm or from a designer and chop it up and put it into SharePoint without requiring the designer to be a SharePoint wizard. So it really opens up the number of people who are going to be able to do this kind of work. Next we have metadata navigation. And metadata navigation is a system where we can create term sets and drive the site's navigation based on that. And this is a great feature because in previous versions of publishing, the storage of pages, the structure of the site, was used to drive the navigation, and this made it very inflexible and pretty confusing for a lot of people. Going hand in hand with metadata navigation as far as simplifying and decoupling the storage from the presentation is this idea of search-driven publishing sites. Search-driven publishing sites use a technique called cross-site publishing, where we create catalogs of information in one site and then use search to publish that content to one or more other sites. And so that other site that is being published to, that's consuming the catalog, can actually consume catalogs from lots of different places. A catalog in one place can be consumed by multiple different sites. And at the core of all of this is a new web part called the Content by Search web part, and it leverages search. So you should be getting the idea right about now that if search isn't working in your SharePoint 2013 farm, you have a problem because there's a lot of functionality that depends on it. Another weakness of previous versions of SharePoint was the ability to support multiple kinds of devices, mobile devices, tablets, what have you. And so in 2013, we have this concept called device channels that allow us to specify devices based on user agents and format our content as appropriate to those. It's not machine-driven. We have control of it as designers and as developers, and it really opens up SharePoint to a large type of delivery that just wasn't very good before. Next, we have a feature called image renditions. In previous versions of SharePoint, if we had an image that we wanted to have a thumbnail of cropped differently in different places, we had to take that image and make multiple images from it, which were then uploaded into our site. In 2013, what we can do is upload one image, and then using defined renditions, which are different dimensions for the image, SharePoint will automatically, underneath the covers, generate renditions of that one single image for us. Furthermore, we can control the cropping of those images. And this makes management of images a lot better because we don't have to have multiple copies now. We can just have the one. Finally, we have much better support for multilingual sites. The variations feature is still there, as well as the multi-user interface features. But now variations are strictly used to target multilingual scenarios, as opposed to some of the other things that variations have been used for in the past. There is also, out of the box, the ability to ship off the content to a service that runs at Microsoft, have it translated automatically, and have it come back. It also supports human workflows for translation, but this is a very welcome feature for people who would like to be able to target common languages but don't necessarily want to hire a whole bunch of people to do their translation on an ongoing basis. All right, so that's a lot to take in, and obviously I can't show you all of that in one single demonstration, but what I am going to show you now is a publishing site, which is one of the out-of-the-box site templates, and we'll take a look at the design manager at a very high level. Okay, so where we left off, I was in Central Admin and I was showing you that there was this thing called a community portal. So I'm going to use the same page, which is the Create Site Collection page. And I'm going to create a new publishing portal. All right, so we'll just call this Publishing. And this is going to be at the URL pub. And I will have the administrator be the primary site collection administrator for this site collection. And I'll click OK, and we will wait for it to create our site. All right, so let's open up this site. Now, one thing that you would notice right off the bat if you've done publishing in previous versions of SharePoint is that we don't have the hideous blue band with the happy people on the screen sitting here on the home page. The previous version gave you what was really called a starter publishing site that existed to give you something that you could kind of copy. But this version gives you a starter site that actually has instructions depending on the role that you're going to play as a team member that's working on that publishing site. So if you're an information architect, it's going to walk you through the steps, which is to set up permissions and make your site multilingual if you want to, define content types and navigation, and then create content and configure search. Now, if you're a visual designer, then it's going to have you import a design package, assuming you have one, which you probably don't. Configure image renditions, do the design, and then specify what site templates are going to be available to the users. Where this really starts as the visual designer, though, is in a tool called Design Manager, which is available under the little gear, which is the site actions. So once again, we have a set of steps that we can run through with help for each one of those, which is very welcome. And I'm not going to go through the process of really creating any kind of custom design right now. Instead, what I'm going to do is pick a pre-installed look. And so out of the box, we have a number of fairly ugly starter templates. But in each case, we have a few things that we can control. So this right here is the background, and I'm not going to show you this, but this supports drag and drop. So I can change it and browse to a file, or I can drag and drop an image right on here, and it will update the background. I can select a color scheme for the site, again based on pre-installed looks. And there are a couple of layouts that are available out of the box. And so we'll use this one called Oslo. I can preview the theme or the design. And if I like what I see, I can keep it. All right, so when we went through that process here in Design Manager, I chose a thing called Oslo. Now, what Oslo is an HTML page which has been brought into SharePoint and then edited via the design tool of your choice. Could be Notepad, Dreamweaver, whatever. And SharePoint has generated a master page based on that HTML as it's been edited. And it's done this, like I said, independently of a design tool. You're not stuck with SharePoint Designer. Now, where this HTML page is located is actually in the Master Pages gallery. So I'm going to go to Site Settings and go to Master Pages and Page Layouts. And then we will open this in Windows Explorer. Now, occasionally this will crash on me, so hopefully it's going to work this time. Not looking good. So we'll just let Internet Explorer come to the realization that it has in fact crashed, and then we'll recover this web page and try it again. Oh, how about that? It finally worked. Okay, so here we are in the master page gallery, and we have this HTML page called Oslo, and there's another one down here called Seattle. And I'm going to open this with Visual Studio 2012 just to show you what this looks like. All right, so you can see what we have here is, basically an HTML page. SharePoint has decorated the HTML with, or rather Microsoft has pre-decorated the HTML with a number of comments in different places to let you understand what is going on in different spots, and also in order to help generate the finished master page based on the HTML. So you don't edit the master page, you just edit the HTML. And it's not super complicated either. We're looking at just a few hundred lines of HTML, and probably without the comments, less than 70 maybe. All right, so you may be wondering, how do you know what to put into the page and where? So if we come back over here to Design Manager and go into Edit Master Pages, I'm going to pick Oslo, and it's going to take us to this little page where we see this heading called Snippets. And snippets allow us to generate different pieces of HTML for different pieces of the master page. So if I choose search box here, you can see there's search. And then over here I have all the things that I can customize and the generated HTML ASP.NET code that goes along with that. And so what I would do is I would pick my snippet, style it as much as I wanted to in this tool, then copy it out of here, put it into my HTML, and SharePoint will take care of the rest of generating that master page for me. All right, so let's come back over to the home page here, and I'm going to show you one last thing with regards to publishing before we move on. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a page. I'm going to call it a page. And here we have a page based on a layout, and this area that says page content is where the content would go. One of the big improvements that they made for authors in this is that we can now paste out of Word, which we always could do before, except now instead of trying to take our layout, or rather our styles, from the Word document and make them look the same inside of SharePoint, the default behavior is to take what we put in and apply the SharePoint styles to it. So now we can paste out of Microsoft Word and automatically have the page use the right styles instead of what we had to do before, which was paste out of Word, strip the formatting off, and then very laboriously replace the formatting piece by piece to match our site. And so this is one of the big improvements for authors in Web Content Management in SharePoint 2013. The other kind of content management that people use SharePoint for is enterprise content management. And SharePoint's enterprise content management features have always been strong. And the changes in this version are mostly evolutionary, nothing really revolutionary. but some key ease-of-use features have been added. So what enterprise content management is all about is compliance. So we want to be able to manage records, things that are important, and we also want to be able to set retention policies. Now, in the event that our company is involved in some sort of litigation where there is discovery going on, we need to be able to find the information. And so search is very important. And the more metadata we have, the more search is going to be able to work well for us. Now, there's lots of other reasons why we might want to use search as well. Don't get me wrong, but when we're doing discovery, search is just absolutely critical. One thing that they did, along with all of the other ease-of-use features or refinements in SharePoint 2013, is they wanted to make it simple and unobtrusive. So it's possible to turn on the records management features and do records management in place without people actually having to do anything in order to make that happen, or even necessarily be aware of the fact that it's taking place. There is an e-discovery center, which is refined in 2013, that we can use if we are lawyers and doing discovery to keep track of what we're doing and pin different versions of documents, place holds on them, etc. and so forth, and define cases so that we get integrated case management. All right, so let's jump over, and what I want to show you is probably the most important thing that they've done with regards to enterprise content management to me that most people are going to use right out of the gate, which is they made it much easier to apply metadata to documents. All right, so like I said, we're barely going to scratch the surface of enterprise content management, but one of the things that I think is most important to enabling all of these scenarios is making it easy for end users to add metadata to the documents. So I've come over here to this document library, and I've got a bunch of documents in here, none of which have any metadata on them. So if we were to take a look at getting started, we can see the nice little display from Office Web Apps, but if we go to view the properties, it has a title. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the ribbon, and I'm going to choose Quick Edit. And when that happens, I get this grid style layout. And this is pretty cool because right here I can add new columns. And so I'm going to come over here to More Column Types, and I'm going to call this Sample Metadata. And I'm going to say this is a Managed Metadata column. And I'm going to scroll down here to the section for term set, and I'm going to come in and expand to see what I have here already. I've got this one here, and I created a term set called foo, which has two terms, bar and who. And so this is going to be the thing that describes the metadata for this document. And I will come down here and choose OK. All right, so now this has got the sample metadata column, but there's already a dozen documents in here. So I could, of course, edit the properties for each one of these and fill in this field, but nobody wants to do that. And so the classic problem with metadata has been if you try to add it later on, it's just too burdensome for people to be able to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, say, these first N records here. Whoops, I need to be back in Quick Edit. So let me come back over here, and I'm going to set the metadata for this to be who. And then for the rest of them, I'll set the metadata to be boo. I've done something wrong here. Let me open this up again. Oh, bar. There we go. Okay. It didn't like that bad one in there. Let's fix that up. All right, well, clearly the folks at Microsoft have got a little bug that they need to fix. It doesn't like that at all. But still, little minor inconvenience there. And as a result of having this feature, now I can quickly apply new metadata to a whole bunch of documents. And once I've been able to do that, then I enable a lot more functionality in terms of my discovery and ability to deal with these. Now, every document has got the ability to examine its compliance details. And so I can see that this is not on hold and it's not a record. And if I had turned on in-place records management, I would be able to declare it instead of it saying I cannot add it, remove it from hold, or declare it as a record, assuming I had permissions to do so. And there are all sorts of audit log reports that I can look at for this individual document.